What's the book called then? What did you say it was called?
Lee Harvey Oswald in black and white.
That's a good title. So have you got any pictures of that? Have you got many of the pictures? Oh, that's a sexy book. Oh, you dirty little bitch. Oh, that looks lovely.
It's all documents and pictures. And...
Ooh, I like it. Yeah. I like it.
Like, this book proves there were two Oswalds. The document.
We have started, my friend. We have started up for sure. Listen, that book you got there, how long has it taken you to write that?
This one's actually pretty quick because I changed the way I approached this book, because A Warning from History is like a typical book. You know, it's just under 400 pages. And I find, especially in this day and age, standard books are daunting for most people still. And so I wanted to do something different. I made it a bigger book. I increased the font size, and I added all documents and photographs to break up the text. And honestly, this book is only about the length of maybe 3 chapters of my first book.
Wow.
Yep. It's just under 40,000 words.
Wow. That's unbelievable, really. Yep. I mean, from someone who does, because I write, like, you know, say an average article for me is like 7,500 words. You're basically approaching 25,000 words there, and then it's only a little bit more to get up to write something like that.
Because I wanted the documents to tell the story. I just needed to explain the documents and how they connected and what they mean. And so I wanted the focus to be on what I was presenting. And so it really made me realize that, like, this is a much more digestible format for books. And it's hard because the biggest criticism I got on A Warning from History was that I reference a ton of documents and stuff, but there's no pictures at all. And so I wanted to kill that argument, right? And so the documents tell the tale, and no one ever sees them. And especially in this book, the documents I pulled here are beyond obscure, because they were pulled by originally John Armstrong, who is one of the absolute greatest researchers that's ever lived. And his work is largely overlooked, marginalized, and pushed aside. And so
best people's work are marginalized, overlooked, and pushed to the side. There's so many things to unpack with that. I have a memory of my first ever English presentation that me and a guy called Brian Rich, when we were about 12 years old, to present. We got to choose whichever we wanted, whatever cases we wanted, but something about history in crime and punishment. And we chose Jack the Ripper, and which me and you aren't going to discuss now. We'll fight. And Myra Hindley and Ian Brady murders. And during that process, it was looking at all of these pictures, getting the books out of the library and reading and having these massive pictures, these the actual newspaper articles from the time, things like that within the book made me so, like, enticed me so much. I loved the idea of having a book that's like that, that's big and bulky, and that you can actually see the original documents, because that also makes it more, as I was saying, 20 to 25,000 words makes a series, like a 3 articles where I write. If I was to write a 5-part series and put all of that source evidence down, that would be so fantastic. That's such a good idea. I really like it. And go on, explain it then. To the people who don't know what the book's about, what's it called and what's it about?
Sure. Lee Harvey Oswald in black and white, volume 1 specifically, because originally this was going to be a much larger volume. It was going to include Oswald throughout the Marines, but that is a mammoth undertaking. And because Oswald and the Marines is a rabbit hole unto itself. And so that's going to be the next book, and that's probably going to be of the same format, but that'll probably be more like 50 or 60,000 words, because there's just far too much information in that time period. But this book focuses on Oswald from the time of his birth, October 18th, 1939, through October 24th, 1956, when he leaves Fort Worth for the Marines. And it is ultimately a story of tradecraft. The story of Oswald's life is one of utter and complete contradiction. It is a story that, when you look at the fine details, makes no sense whatsoever. Like, there are numerous years that Oswald went to school for only 2 or 3 months in the whole school year. Yet he managed to pass and go to the next grade somehow. That doesn't make any sense in anybody's world. So his entire life is nothing more than a series of events like this that are contradicted by what we're told in the official story, that don't make sense on their face, or that are contradicted by a series of other documents that literally paint the picture of Oswald being in multiple places at a time. More often than not, with witnesses on both ends attesting to the fact that Oswald was here, and other witnesses who attested to the fact that Oswald was there. The same thing applies to Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, who the world has come to know as a practical nurse. But yet to this very day, I can't seem to find any history or record or even time frame that Marguerite Oswald could have ever gone to school or been trained to be a nurse. So we have a story of a child and a mother that, for the most part, I don't want to say it's a fabrication, but it's really a piecing together of multiple people's lives. And when you dig into the documents, you will find a lot more than shadows of another person's life. You will find almost somewhat near complete timeline for two separate people when you really analyze the life of Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, that's an interesting. Say two.
So you said earlier that intelligence can get children involved at a young age. I would take it further, and I would say that intelligence can drag people into intelligence schemes from childhood against their will. And I think that is the case with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, so I've talked with a few people. Some people who were on the independent media, some people who were in that famous Gifted program in America. Some who have been on various programs who talk about being approached by or their family being approached by people who are in the CIA for recruitment at a very early age, and a lot of the time they're very gentle, but they're very, they're trying to get their way, and a lot of people, I would assume, say no because some of it means them leaving the care of their parents and being entrusted to the CIA, which of course is we know an extremely dangerous thing for members of intelligence to be in charge of little children. So with that being said, what are you trying? Are you saying that this was 2 children?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
That's so you're because that would make sense for things later on as well. When would this decision, do you think, if there's a moment where it's a decision to have 2 children share the same identity, at least for the sake of whatever history we'll remember within documentation and the like, when did this moment begin? Was it at conception? Or was it later? Could these people have been from separate families? Could they be from the same families? Are they twins? What's the rules behind this, do you think?
All right. So I have gone down every single path that you just said.
Yeah, of course.
And there has been a lot of speculation on Oswald due to the fact that he seemingly spoke Russian, but no one can tell me when he learned to speak Russian. There was some speculation that perhaps the other Oswald, and this goes back to John Armstrong's work. I had to show a lot of his work wrong, unfortunately. His data was amazing, his conclusions incorrect. But ultimately, there was an idea that the other Oswald was perhaps someone taken from Europe, from an Eastern Bloc country who already spoke Russian, and raised him under the name Lee Harvey Oswald, in which you start to have the duplicate records for his entire life, which we'll get into. But that is a theory, and that would kind of coincide with a CIA program called AE Balcony, where they used naturalized American citizens who spoke fluent, they said Baltic languages.
Can you tell me the name of that program again? Sorry.
AE Balcony.
AE Balcony.
AE Balcony.
Yeah. Okay, I thought you said Eggy Balcony. I was like, oh yeah.
So AE Balcony was supposed to use naturalized American citizens to send them back to Soviet Union, particularly Latvia, Estonia, and
Estonia.
And those kind of countries that were part of the Soviet Union. And the whole job was to get them there, and they were supposed to basically just be a point of contact or recruit people for a network or whatever. That program ran from the same dates that Oswald was in the Soviet Union, from 1959. The program ran from late 59 till June of 62, which is the exact same time that Oswald came back from the Soviet Union. However, when you dig into Oswald's life growing up, there is enough of an indication to me that I interpret the data as all of that stuff about a foreign kid who spoke Russian, who was recruited. I've pretty much eliminated that as a possibility. And the reason I say that is because, in particular, you get to a point where Oswald is in New York City in late 52 to January 54. And during that time, he is, I'm not going to get yet into the school record conflicts and the address conflicts in New York. But one thing that Oswald said to his psychiatrist when he was assigned a psychiatrist is that he said, oftentimes he would not go to school because when he moved into a new community, knowing that he would ditch school a lot, his brother would go to school in his stead. And that doesn't make any sense. And from the perspective of Oswald's brother is Robert Oswald, and he's 5.5 years older than Lee Harvey Oswald.
They're dressed up in his schoolgirl uniform and go to school.
Yeah, no way in hell that a 16-year-old is passing for a 10 or 11-year-old in school. So what brother is Oswald talking about? This to me is the biggest hint of all that we have, that this other Oswald was actually a brother. Now, if you come to the conclusion that he's a brother, you have a very limited set of circumstances under which that could exist. One, Oswald's a twin, and they were separated at birth for whatever reason. This I can't seem to find a valid explanation for due to the time period, October 18th, 1939.
Unless that was part of the program. The program was the obsession with twins.
Possibly.
Go on.
Possibly. That's a possibility, that there was some awareness, and that would mean that there's intelligence involvement in 39, which is definitely not CIA. And who would it be in 39? Naval intelligence. Naval intelligence was an intelligence powerhouse, from what I'm learning, that had spanned the world over, and we never hear none of it. Okay. And so that's where I think most of our country, as America, our country's secrets are hidden in naval intelligence.
That was what Ian Fleming was naval intelligence, along with Ivor Bryce was OSS, but I think he worked with naval intelligence for years. Of course, the people who were funding Eric Weinstein through his second degree as well, of course, naval intelligence there. Go on, sorry, continue to.
So we start to have conflicts in the record in 1941. Oh, but before I get to that, let me give you the other alternative. The other alternative as to why there's two Oswalds is because Marguerite Oswald was somewhat of a promiscuous woman. Let me say that.
Oh,
to be nice.
baby. Oh, no, not back then.
Yep.
People couldn't be promiscuous back then. They had chastity belts.
That's crazy because what I'm learning about back then is everybody was banging everyone's wife back then.
What?
So
What? You saying people were having sex in the 50s and 60s?
Yes.
Well, actual intercourse.
It's no different than it is today, it seems.
Oh, my God. Yeah, but they weren't
have
having cunnilingus. You're not saying they were having cunnilingus. Come on, don't be silly.
The alternative is, so Robert Oswald, Oswald's father, dies in August 19th of 39. And Marguerite Oswald is a sociopath. She is literally the most cold-hearted person you ever come across in your life. I would not want to face her in a dark alley. And she tried to have Robert Oswald buried that very same day. And she didn't even notify the family. Robert Oswald's brother, Harvey Oswald, who was in contact with them, found out. He notified the rest of the family, and the rest of the family cut all contact with her immediately. He ended up getting buried the next day, not in the Oswald plots at the cemetery that they had, but in the Claverie plots, that was where Marguerite's family was buried, which is a whole crazy controversy, if you ask me, that no one's ever talked about. But beyond that, the relationship with Harvey Oswald, who is Robert's older brother, Harvey Francis Oswald, he was present for Lee Harvey Oswald's birth 2 months after his brother's death. So he maintained some kind of relationship with her. Now, I think it's a very good possibility the other Oswald could be his son with Marguerite, born basically Irish twins like 10 or 11 months later. I think that's a very good possibility.
Irish twins. How have I never heard the term Irish twins before? Trust you to have that term. Go on. Sorry, Cory.
But those are the two possibilities. They're either real twins or he was born less than a year later and the father is Harvey Francis Oswald. Those are the only two possibilities that I've narrowed it down to if they're brothers. There's just no other place, or there's no other time or place or era that it could have occurred. And then we have the very first divergence in the record in 1941. So in 1941, you have to fast forward to Oswald applying to the Marine Corps. When Oswald applied to the Marine Corps, he put in his brief biographical history that he had lived in Fort Worth from 41 to 56. This could not be more incorrect. Oswald lived in New Orleans all the way up until April of 1944, when he actually moved to Dallas and lived at the Victor Street address. So to put on his Marine application, he moved to Fort Worth in 41. That's the first divergence in the record. The next divergence in the record comes in 1945, when Robert Oswald will testify that in September of 45, the whole family drove up to the Chamberlain Hunt Military Academy, dropped off Oswald's brothers, and then Oswald, his mother, and her husband at the time, a guy named Edwin Ekdahl, took a trip up to Boston and spent about 6 months in Boston. But during that time, they made a trip out to Arizona, and there's photographs of them in Arizona. So Oswald was traveling between September and, whatever 6 months later is, like January, February, something like that. Well, the problem is that we have school records for Oswald confirming he was at the Benbrook Common School starting October 31st of 1945, and that he went there through, it's kind of controversial as to when he left, but sometime between February and April of 1946. The same time that he is documented as having been in Boston and traveling out to Arizona and all this stuff. These records are incongruent. They are not compatible. This pattern will then continue again in 1947. Now, in this era of 45 to 47, you have a whole bunch of controversy over address stuff again. 1946, they're supposed to be in Covington, Louisiana. But again, we have more controversial records showing that they were in Benbrook in 1946. And Robert Oswald testified to the Warren Commission they were in Benbrook in 46, when we have school records that Oswald was at the Covington Grammar School during 46. And then 47, we have the same thing continues. We have an address 101 San Saba in Benbrook, which is a new address in 47. But this official, and we have the documentation showing.
So this would be. I mean, the first moment of divergence of these contradicting. That's how. When's that? 1940 something.
1941.
1941. So
Oswald's
deep
2
in.
years old.
Okay, deep in the time when they were forming these. I mean, they must have been getting information about what the Nazis were doing and just thinking, how can we compete with this? How can we compete? Because I mean, some of the Nazi programs were pretty like open about what they were aiming to achieve. And is it just that it's an expression of the same desires under two different systems? The Nazis were open about what they were doing to an extent when it come down to like training people separately and doing these things, and this was like the West showing that they will always want to show a different face. And
I think so. But also, let me talk for a minute about why I believe they recruit in families. And I believe it's because if you can get a child conditioned from the time he's young to be part of the team, it increases the loyalty exponentially. Because not only is he being loyal to his parents by doing this, he's being loyal to the CIA, and the relationship between the parents and the CIA or whatever intelligence agency they're with, that would kind of like be part of the child's fostering, right? So to betray the organization would be to betray your parents, kind of thing. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So I think it's just more of a conditioning. You're getting people who are guaranteed to be loyal forever. Because if you got to count on people to join the agency from the outside and be loyal once they know what you've been doing all this time, good luck finding new people. So recruitment within families, I think, became a priority very early on. I think it was just a kind of a known tactic that they used.
Who do you think? I'm not sure if you come across any of this, but who do you think was managing the children during this time? Then was one with the birth parents and one elsewhere.
Okay, so this is where it gets super interesting, because in this 1941 time period, this is where we start to have a major documented gap in the record of Marguerite Oswald. So we don't really know what she was doing from the time of Oswald's birth until late 41. We kind of have an address for her, but she wasn't working. She had money from Robert Oswald's death. So she had money. She didn't have to work. But in 1941, it's alleged that she lived, starting in 41 through 42 and 43, it's alleged that she lived at a series of addresses that don't check out. She gives address of 2136 Broadway, and she gives an address of 227 Atlantic Avenue. Those are supposed to be in New Orleans and a little suburb called Algiers. But when the FBI went and talked to people living there, they found out that no one named Marguerite Oswald ever lived at either of these addresses. So at this exact same time in New York City, the Navy was in the process of establishing what's called the WAVES program. That's the Women in the Navy program. So all the guys, all the men get shipped off to World War II. And they needed massive amounts of people to fill all the job vacancies here in America. And that wasn't just secretarial work. That was cryptography. That was arms and maintenance. That was everything that men would do, women were doing in this program called the WAVES. And the program officially launched in June of 1942. Like in June of 42, it was up and running.
So that's like 6 months after America have entered the war officially.
Right, give or take.
And they've entered the war because of an attack on one of their number one naval bases, which would have...
Right, that's the whole setup thing. That's a whole conversation unto itself. But ultimately, I placed the addresses that were supposed to be in the New Orleans area. I placed them in Manhattan and in Staten Island, because at the exact same time, the place where they were establishing the WAVES and doing all the training was at the Bronx campus of Hunter College in New York. And so when you look at where those addresses were that were unverified, there the 2136 Broadway. Turns out there's a 2136 Broadway in Manhattan. It's the Hotel Belvedere. And it was only 9.8 miles from the Hunter College training facility. Then Marguerite Oswald's only alleged to have lived there for 3 weeks. Would make perfect sense if it was a hotel. But again, this address is supposed to be in New Orleans, but it's not. Same thing with 227 Atlantic Avenue. I found 227 Atlantic Avenue 17 miles away in Staten Island. And so to me, I concluded that those addresses that she gave were not in New Orleans. They were in New York. She was training at the Bronx facility for the Navy WAVES program. This would reach all the way up until they actually launched the program. Well, she's actually, you don't know where those addresses come to an end in 43, right?
So Lee Harvey Oswald at this time, because he's the youngest of her children, and he's born in 1939. So at this time, he's like 3-4 years old.
Well, in
And so
1941, he's 2, and this is where it gets interesting with Lee Harvey Oswald, and where we get some more contradiction, because so we know for fact that Marguerite dumped Lee Harvey Oswald with her sister Lillian Moret, and she had Oswald in her home for 9 or 10 months before Oswald goes into the Bethlehem orphanage where his 2 other brothers had already been. So let me reiterate the fact Marguerite Oswald is a disgusting, horrible human being who wanted nothing to do with her children, and she got rid of them every single time she had a chance to. So at this point, from late 41 all the way till April 44,
he's in some sort of home, and
he is bouncing back and forth between the home of Lillian Moret and the Bethlehem orphanage. So Marguerite Oswald is in the wind. We have no confirmation of where she could have ever possibly have been. We have some indications, though. We have a document from the House Un-American Affairs Committee, right? They're looking for communists back in the 40s. There is a document from that ended up in a CIA Office of Security file it's on Marguerite Oswald, and it has some references to New Jersey and the Nazis. And that is the only thing we know about it. And it's from 1941. We don't have the document itself. We got that information from a cover sheet that John Armstrong uncovered. And when the HSCA attempted, the House Committee on Assassinations in the 70s, attempted to get that document, they were told to pound sand. So that is, to me, an extremely important document that the world needs to see. On top of that, there is a 1960 naval intelligence document that's 986 pages long on Marguerite Oswald, 3 years before the assassination. And at the bottom, it lists like a brief summary of contents. And in there, it says rap sheet, meaning she was arrested at some point. That's not in any official record or history. When was Marguerite Oswald arrested? Why was she arrested? And which Marguerite Oswald are we talking about? Because I can tell you with absolute certainty, if you're going to have 2 Lee Harvey Oswalds, you have to have 2 Marguerite Oswald caretakers, which is exactly what we have.
That's one of my. I mean, that was really the nub of my question. Are they creating 2 Marguerites, or are they? Is someone else in charge of him during that period? So, or one of them during that period. So you talk about this hotel in was it the Bronx? Did you say?
The hotel itself was in Manhattan,
in Broadway,
but it was but she was actually in the school was in the Bronx.
Okay, so this hotel, well, could it be a managed place where children who are being trained go and are looked after by something that is much more organized?
No, it would have been just about her, because Oswald was still in New Orleans during this time.
Right.
Remember,
okay.
At this time in 41, when I believe she goes up to New York to do the training and disappears for all these years, this is the exact same time that we have the indication of the divergence in the school records showing that Oswald, or in the Marine record showing Oswald moved in 41. So here's another thing: if we have these 2 Oswalds, one of them's at Lillian Moret's, where's the other one? If he's not with the Marguerite caretaker, because Marguerite's out doing other stuff. See, this is where it gets complicated, and it becomes obvious there's more people involved, because you don't have enough people to take care of what needs to be getting taken care of if you're only dealing with one person. So you run into this stuff. This has like been driving me crazy for a long time now. But let me just show you a picture. I'm gonna show a picture real quick. I'm gonna screen share.
Okay.
Where's the screen share button? Is that it? Yeah. All right. I think I got it.
Right, go on then, hotshot. Share your screen.
So, these are 2 different women. The woman on the left is Marguerite Oswald, who we have a complete and total photographic record from the time that she's like a teenager. Her teeth are very clear. They're very white. She has a big smile like that. She's about 5'7" tall. This photograph on the left is taken of her at Paul's shoe store in 1957. The the woman on the right is the woman that the world has come to know as Marguerite Oswald. She's only 5'1" and she's fat.
She's fat.
Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure I've identified who this woman actually is. The woman who we've been told is Marguerite Oswald, who is most certainly not Marguerite Oswald. I'm pretty confident I know who it is. And it's a family member.
But what you're painting here, the picture that you're painting, is really a narcissistic mother who has no care for her children and is willing to use them for the benefit of herself during a time where all of the rules were rewritten because it was war.
Right. So here I have one more picture that I'll show you.
Okay. I find that very interesting. I remember seeing a documentary about 10 years ago. It was.
So these are the two Oswalds. These are the two Oswalds. The one on the top, that's the real Lee Harvey Oswald, and we don't know who that. We have not seen a photograph of him since that photograph on the left, and that was taken on September 10th, 1959. That is the last time we'll ever see the real Lee Harvey Oswald. The person on the bottom is, and you'll find. So,
do you think these guys are brothers?
Yep. I do.
Okay, there's a lot of similarities in there. There's a lot of clear similarities.
But see, it's not just a photographic record that I make these determinations on. So when you get through Oswald's life history, you'll find when he joins the Marines, we have a photograph of him in the Marines. Actually, I have the picture. I'll dig it up here real quick. The picture of Oswald in the Marines, he has one of those height measuring things behind him, right? So you can tell he's 5'9" tall. When he gets out of the Marines, they measure him again, and all the documentation shows that he is 5'11" tall.
Oh, those Crocs, though.
When you look at the every single record of Oswald's height from when he gets arrested in New Orleans on August 9th, and when he gets arrested on November 22nd, and in his own handwriting on the application at the Texas School Book Depository, indicates he's only 5'9" tall. So he enters the Marines at 5'9", and he's only 17 years old, so he's still growing. He gets out at 5'11", and then by the time he gets back from the Soviet Union, he's back to being permanently 5'9" again.
Yeah,
right.
Sounds like he was wearing big Crocs.
Big Crocs, okay, Crocs of shit. Here I got another picture. I'll show you this one.
Okay. You're just going to flash up a picture of you nude at some point, aren't you? Go on. There you go.
That's Lee Harvey Oswald, the real Lee Harvey Oswald. When he entered the Marine Corps, he's 5'8" tall. Okay.
Oh, wow.
This is not the guy who was arrested on November 22nd.
No, it's not.
And it's really difficult for me to explain on our show because there's so much interconnectivity and overlap from this event to that event to that event that really, the way to really understand it is laid out pretty clearly in my book.
Okay, we're bringing back that picture. I want to see that picture again. I want to have a conversation about that picture. So where does this picture come from?
This picture was taken in San Diego on October 26th, 1956.
And this is purported to be the same Lee Harvey Oswald.
It is purported to be. The powers that be tell us that this is Lee Harvey Oswald.
And how has this not been a central point of conversation beforehand?
I don't know. Your guess is good. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
I mean, that's pretty conclusively somebody else. That is most definitely somebody else. That is not Lee Harvey Oswald. So we can be sure that there is at least two, and they do look similar, which does then back up, and they look like they're roughly the same age as well. Maybe this one's a little bit younger.
Okay, so I have another picture of Oswald I'm going to show you. And this one was taken at Sugi, Japan.
Sugi, where the fellas do the woogie and the woogie do boogity boo, like Nagasaki, where the fellas do the wacky. Anyway, go on.
That's Lee Harvey Oswald in Natsuki, Japan.
Okay, well, there's issues there, isn't there?
It doesn't look anything like the guy.
Why is he doing racist Japanese face? This is unacceptable. First of all, that's my first problem.
But yeah, this doesn't look anything like the guy who was arrested on November 22nd, 1963, because it's not. It's just not. And when you go through the Marine record is the craziest of all, because I've got him in two different places multiple times. And then from October of 57 until March of 58, I have him in three places at once. This is where it gets wild. So when Oswald is arrested and on November 22nd, that very same day, a guy named Palmer McBride, who was in the Air Force,
what a name.
He goes to his superiors and he goes, "Hey, I got to tell you, I knew Lee Harvey Oswald growing up." And he tells the story and he gives explicit detail on when and where he knew Lee Harvey Oswald. And he knew Lee Harvey Oswald between those dates, 57, 58, when he worked at Pfister Dental Laboratory in New Orleans.
Pfister
Dental Laboratory with a P.
Wow.
And so
right.
he the details he provides are like they're concrete. He and Oswald discussed the Sputnik launch, which happened on a certain date, right after 57. So that was a very specific piece of information. They went and saw a specific opera that was only in town for 3 days during a very specific time period. And at this exact same time period, Oswald is documented in Atsugi, Japan. And not only is Oswald documented in Atsugi, Japan, both Oswalds, I can prove, were in Atsugi, Japan, or in the Far East, because they were moving back and forth during this time from the Philippines and Subic Bay back to Atsugi. So there's a bouncing around for a couple months.
Date is this?
We're talking October 57 to March of 58.
Oh, shit, in a handbag with a ball sack in it. That's because that is the sorry to use that terminology all at once, but I was thinking he's not going to tell me this is 57, 58, is he? That's what I was thinking when he was saying that, because you're talking about this, and of course I've done the research on Gloria Steinem and that missing admiral of an entire fleet in America, one of the biggest men in the Navy, Quiggle, Admiral Quiggle, Rear Admiral Quiggle, goes missing off a ship while he's being relocated from I think he was either Japan and South Korea at that time, across to, and Gloria Steinem's the last witness to see him, and gives it says that he had an argument with his wife and then he left and he was never seen again, and he walked off, and then they didn't find him, and they decided it was too hard to go back for him because they had been on the way to America, so there was no search party put out for him. That was 1957, 1958, just before she's properly, she's already met some of the CIA people who are going to recruit her for the CIA in India at this point, and she's hung around in Japan for that time, and then that rear admiral goes missing off the ship, and then she goes and meets with the guys in Harvard, and the independent information services is dreamed up, and she's told that she'll be working for the CIA for sure. That's wild, because there's a guy who allegedly fell off a ship in the Oswald story. Holy hell in a handbag. We're getting down there. Go on. Okay, tell me a little bit about this guy who falls off a ship. Do you know about it? If you know anything about it? Oh yes. So I love this. A little bit of investigating this weekend. Go on. His falling off the ship, and we're talking about a guy named Raymond Strand, who was in the Navy, and he falls off a ship. They're domestically here in America somewhere, but at the time, prior to him being here in America, when he falls off the ship, which is about April or May of 58, he was actually stationed in Subic Bay in the Philippines at the exact same time as his brother, Martin Strand, who was in the Marines with Oswald, who was also stationed there. So for a very brief period of time, we have Oswald moving around from Corregidor and Subic Bay in the Philippines. And while he's stationed at Subic Bay, there was a guy named Martin Strand who was actually with Oswald going back to Biloxi, actually going back to Jacksonville, Florida in 56, a year prior. He was one of a group of 5 guys who was with Oswald kind of continuously throughout his Marine career. Well, anyway, he shot to death with his own weapon
on guard duty in Subic Bay in the Philippines. And Oswald was alleged to have been responsible for that. That's the rumor that was spread immediately. Like, this guy got shot, and immediately the rumor spread that Oswald was responsible for shooting this guy.
Wow.
This whole investigation was covered up. But 4 or 5 months later, Martin Strand's brother, Raymond Strand, who was there at the same time that Oswald and Martin Strand were in Subic Bay, Raymond Strand allegedly falls off a boat, and they didn't find him for like a week. These guys were murdered. I have no doubts they were murdered. The circumstances surrounding Martin Strand. So Martin Strand was shot with a shotgun from a distance of 8 to 14 inches under the left armpit.
Oh my God, that's uncomfortable.
With his own weapon, which never should have had a shotgun shell in the weapon in the first place. The policy was you kept the shotgun shell in your pocket unless you sensed there was trouble, and then you put a shotgun shell in there. But he was supposed to be on guard duty with an empty weapon, and then he's killed with his own gun, and Oswald is dragged into it. So to me, it's about as cut and dry that he was whacked. Him and his brother both found out probably about the two Oswalds, because at this exact same time, you have a weird kind of ambiguity in the record. But I can tell you that the two Oswalds were both in the Far East at the same time. And I have a feeling these guys found out about it, or one of them found out about it and told the other one, and then they killed them both. That's what I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
There is a lot going on in there. So let me tell you the bit I was explaining. I'm going to go to my Pottinger Supremacy article. It's on NEWSPASTE. And it's the second in the Pottinger piece. Includes the part that's about Gloria Steinem's recruiting. And Gloria Steinem ends up becoming a girlfriend to Stanley Pottinger for a 10-year period. So
she partnered with Elizabeth Forsling Harris, who attempted miserably to provide an alibi for Jack Valenti for November 22nd. It's a weird tangled web.
It is a weird tangled web. Now, if we're going across here, have a look at this, have a look at a bit of this. On the 25th of July, 1958, the Daily Times newspaper of Ohio was one of the many outlets to run a syndicated news article on the very peculiar disappearance in a piece entitled Transferred Admiral Lost at Sea, Suicide Suspected. Rear Admiral Lynn C. Quiggle had been in the process of transferring from his post as Deputy Chief of Staff, that's pretty high up, on the Joint Staff Command of U.S. forces in Japan. So he was actually focused on Japan, where he had also been assigned as the United States Forces Japan representative to the U.S.-Japan Joint Committee, so pretty high up, which had been set up under administrative agreement between the two countries. That's Rear Admiral Lynn C. Quiggle there. This story was mind-blowing.
And so what boat was he on, and where was it?
So here we go. Quiggle had been on board the President Cleveland, a steam passenger ship which had originally been constructed for battle during World War II, but by completion in 1947 had been refitted to be a steamliner. The Cleveland had been taking Quiggle and his wife en route to the new base in San Diego, California, where he'd assumed command of the amphibious Group 1 of the Pacific Fleet. So he was being reassigned.
Hold on a second. Hang on a second.
Go on.
Okay. All right. So a lot is going on in here.
No, it's so.
Okay. So we have a San Diego, California is where they were doing. So my connection to San Diego for Kennedy is Oswald in early 59, just before he was supposed to do his Russian test and to get his GED. You have a weird ambiguous period between January and March of 59 that you really aren't sure what he's up to. But he was sent to San Diego to participate in some sort of drills, some naval drills. And this was in January, February of 1959. And so we have that connection there. But what else caught my attention? Something else caught my attention.
He was at new base in San Diego, California. Go on.
The amphibious group. Okay. The amphibious Group 1 of the Pacific Fleet. Now, this to me is very significant because at this time, one of the guys who impersonated Oswald in New Orleans and in Dallas was a guy named Kerry Thornley. And Kerry Thornley was in the amphibious group in the Pacific Ocean. But see, his amphibious training was hidden. On when you pull his actual documents on where he was when he was in the Marine Corps. Well, first of all, he lied about his entire record, because he said he didn't join the Marines till 58, but I got records showing he was active since 56. So we got 2 years of like basic training, and then he goes on for a year and a half, something called Basic AAA Man. And I thought that was amphibious assault, but it turned out to be something else. But that something else had to have been a cover, because as soon as he gets out to Atsugi, Japan, he takes place in Operation Strongback, which Operation Strongback was this like massive multi-month, multi-fleet drill that they did, and he participated in the amphibious assault unit. And so that's very striking that you have these connections between here, this guy who fell overboard, and Atsugi, San Diego, and the amphibious assault unit, all connected to Kennedy.
Okay, and so just as she's being recruited to the CIA, let's go on here. I like a bit of this, because Lynn Quiggle's supposed last words were repeated in various newspapers over the following weeks. Words first reported by Gloria Steinem, a 24-year-old student who was in the process of being recruited by the CIA. The Miami Herald also quoted Gloria Steinem in an article on the 25th of July, 1958, but on this occasion the article gave more detail. Miss Gloria Steinem, 24, Washington, D.C., so already basing herself in Washington, a student who became friendly with the Quiggles. So Gloria Steinem became friendly suddenly on the ship with the Quiggles. Like, out of all of the people on the President Cleveland, she said she was told by one of the ship's officers that Quiggle was heard to tell his wife, "You were better off a widow." This was after midnight Tuesday, she said. The officer told her the admiral then kissed his wife and walked slowly to their stateroom. And she gives the actual narrative, a narrative which her brother later said the reporting later on in August 1958, it is almost as though the case was completely abandoned, with Doyle Quiggle, brother of the deceased, stating the skipper classified it as suicide, but he was in no position to know. The Navy Review Board, which began its investigation as soon as the ship docked, did not produce any evidence of suicide. And Lynn Quiggle's brother argued vehemently against the theory that his sibling had committed suicide, stating that there was nothing in his character to justify such a conclusion.
So the intelligence people end up shooting themselves in the foot, because how are you going to have someone like Gloria Steinem, who's a nobody 24-year-old student at the time, happen to be connected to this, and then she ends up being connected to all the other stuff? You basically tip your hand by reusing people. They do this a lot. By recycling people, they fucking tip their hand.
What was really something that I don't really want to like say too much about, because I'm writing parts. I mean, it'd be so hard. I've got such a very intricate knowledge of certain people during this time, like you will have from your research. Certain people that I understand what it means, but it's around this time where John Kenneth Galbraith actually starts taking on Gloria Steinem. And before Gloria Steinem becomes a feminist, she actually writes a book where the foreword is written by John Kenneth Galbraith, who, of course, is massively important. He was one of Kennedy's teachers, and he was the ambassador to India that Kennedy originally asked, under Kennedy, that originally Kennedy asked him to be the ambassador to the Soviet Union, which is like the biggest thing you can be asked during that period in history, to be the ambassador to the Soviet Union.
You know, it's funny because that like indication of her connection to this at the age of 24 debunks her story on how she got connected to CIA. Because when she finally admitted she was CIA, she was like, well, I was doing this feminist thing and they had the same ideas I did.
Yep. And if that's the case, that's like 1960s, 1967, 1968, around really that time that she really starts shooting it with the feminist. And that was post the Playboy, because she's a journalist who reveals how Playboy is actually this place where people, you know, take advantage of women and the likes. And it's in that, and that was her route into being a feminist, but that was so contrived. It's really interesting that when we talk about this period, when you talk then about this period, it sparks, you know, the idea of naval intelligence being so important to grooming intelligence assets that will be heavily used in the future
Mm-hmm.
in an array of ways, creating narratives all over the place, all over the shop, we would say in the UK. And you're describing exactly this, and I can go to the same period and show the same Navy doing exactly the same thing, and all of these connections. Was it? Was the Navy always much further ahead than the CIA during this period?
So this is something that I need to like figure out, because it has really become apparent to me that we've had intelligence since the damn revolution, right? But no one ever hears about it. It was always military. We didn't have civilian. That's the biggest difference with the CIA and all the OSS, is that they were the first civilian intelligence. But we had all intelligence was handled by military prior to that. Like all the post-war stuff that went on in Europe, I always assumed was like a remnants of the OSS between their CIA time, but I was wrong. It was Army Intelligence IC that handled all of the shit that was going on in Europe until 47. And hell, they even continued to handle a lot of the, I'm referring specifically to like the Reinhard Gehlen stuff, the recruitment of Reinhard Gehlen. That was all Army Intelligence. And they handled Reinhard Gehlen until 49. You know what I mean? So we kind of ignore Army intelligence and naval intelligence and the military intelligence establishment that existed for hundreds of years before the CIA even came around. So yeah, I think we as historians in general, we massively overlook naval intelligence, the importance of naval intelligence. Then recently I discover that naval intelligence was the international arm of the FBI. And they were doing, I'm like, wait a minute, what? So this whole time we got the CIA doing stuff. They're in direct competition intelligence-wise for the relationship between the FBI and ONI, which seems to have its nexus in New Orleans with guys like Guy Bannister. So
Guy Bannister, he's never done anything wrong in his life, mate.
So it's wild, because like I never realized that there was this like competition in the intelligence world. You always kind of think of it as like a blanket intelligence, entity, but it's not. It's not at all. And there was competition between ONI and CIA. And I don't know if that led to why ONI dissolved or became, NCIS, which is really sort of an investigative unit. But what happened? Do you think Navy just gave up their intelligence operations? I don't buy that for a second.
That's why I was so interested to find out it was like that Eric Weinstein was funded by a naval what organization is it? We're one of naval intelligence. That'll come out in an article I'm writing at the moment, which will be out soon. And it's really interesting that there's still funding. The Navy is still heavily involved in many different parts of the movements being created today. They get away with that. And they get to be more undercover because we're beating the big boys, CIA and the like, with the sticks. So go on. We got to 1958, and I sidetracked us a little bit. Keep going on a little bit more about Lee Harvey Oswald then during that period.
So 1958.
Or the Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right. So here's the thing. You have when you go through the record of him in the Marines, you have the official story of where he was, right? So initially, this is the story. He goes to San Diego and he gets registered. He goes to Camp Pendleton for combat training. Then he goes to Jacksonville. Then he goes to Biloxi. Then he goes to El Toro for a month, and then he goes overseas, and he's in Atsugi. And I have the whole schedule on where he was. There's an official story on where he was. So you come to understand that official story, and then you come to find dozens and dozens of Marines who came out of the woodwork saying, no, I was with Oswald over here at this time. And they tell full stories about him. Some say he was talking Russian. Some say other details about Oswald. But it becomes blatantly obvious that the official story of where Oswald is, where we do have a documentary record, is not the whole story, right? And so then you kind of find out that there were people who knew Oswald at Memphis, Tennessee, where they say he allegedly went to airline mechanic school, which you'll find in unrelated documents that it's listed that he was an airline mechanic on his MOS, which is military career path, right? And so, but the problem is Oswald is deemed to be a radar operator. Everyone thinks Oswald's a radar operator, but Oswald was not a radar operator. Oswald was not a radar operator. Oswald, in order to be a radar operator in the Marines, you had to go through a 33-week course. And that was typically mostly Air Force people where he did his training. So there wouldn't be really much of a need for him to have taken the 33-week course. He took the 6-week course, which was a aircraft control and warning operator. And what that is he was the guy who was to diagnose and repair the radar units. He was never a radar operator, but that's the story we continually told. And I find that later on, he was almost never in a radar unit because he was always in trouble. He was always either on administrative duty or on mess duty or on guard duty. There's only one person that I've read who could put him in a radar unit, and that's the sergeant from Atsugi. And even when he was in that unit, he worked the plotting board. He didn't work in a radar unit. He worked like the clear board where they had the marker on it. The radar guys would call stuff out and he would mark it on the board.
Oh, right.
That's
so
what he
part
did.
of the radar unit, but not actually on radars.
Right. But the thing is, like, more times than not, he went out of his way to like either get in trouble or to do things. Like at one point, he shot himself in the left elbow right here.
You said shot himself, not shat himself.
Shot himself, yes. And so, number one, he's not supposed to have a gun in the Marines. The story is he ordered a 22, a Derringer, through the mail. This is the dumbest story ever. They're not going to let that through, right? You think the Marines aren't having their mail searched? Give me a break. So somehow he gets a Derringer 22, which later in the report is logged as a 45, which doesn't make sense. And that scar, by the way, of where he shot and had surgery, it does not appear anywhere on his autopsy. He didn't. And in fact, the autopsy guy was interviewed about the scars on his arms, said he didn't have scars on his arms. But at this time period, he had spent about 6 weeks in the hospital and in Iwakuni, Japan, where they extracted the bullet and left about a 2-inch scar. Okay. So, but why did he shoot himself? He actually ended up telling people that he shot himself on purpose. Some people thought that it was so he could wash out of the Marines, but I don't believe that's the case at all. They were about to put him on a boat, and that boat was going to go to the Philippines, or was it Taiwan? One of the two. And anyway, I think he shot himself because the other Oswald was going to be on that boat, and he knew he couldn't be on that boat. And for some reason, they couldn't just restation him on a different assignment. So he went ahead and shot himself in the arm. Not only that, he will then get in trouble again where he confronts a sergeant and he throws a drink on him. Obviously getting in trouble on purpose, right? He knows better. But that happens nonetheless. And
that can be just put down to teenage woes.
It could be. But he's not that stupid. And that got him in trouble, and that got him removed from a unit and got in trouble and put somewhere else, right?
Are you going to suggest that these were done on purpose so that they could mark them down on the record?
I think they were done on purpose to prevent him from going to places where he'd be in the same place as the other Oswald.
Oh, right. Okay.
And why do I think they knew each other? I think John Armstrong did a great job of demonstrating they knew each other. And this goes back to 1955, 1956, when Oswald is allegedly working on the docks in New Orleans for a couple different shipping companies. When you dig into the records, you'll find that he allegedly worked for two shipping companies, two Jags, and a company called J.R. Michel's. Well, John Armstrong had to do all the work on this, and he went and he determined that the managers of each companies were like best friends. They had lunch together all the time. When he interviewed them, neither one of them was aware that Oswald had worked for the other company, right? And so what John Armstrong concluded was that during this time period, the two Oswalds were both working the docks for two different companies. Therefore, they had to know each other. Hence, then you have the reference to his brother, to Milton Kurian in New York, right? So this tells me that this wasn't like a plot that was hidden from them, that they were both willing participants, or not. You're not willing at the age of 12. I'm sorry. I don't give a shit. You're not willing as if you're a minor and you're told to do this. So that's kind of how I think it went down. And I think the fact that he did certain things to end up in the hospital for 6 weeks, or to end up in the, getting reassigned, and he actually ends up in the brig for about a month and a half later on, which is weird because there's Oswald sightings at the time while he's in the brig. So yeah, it's the whole story of Oswald is just this nonstop series of contradictions, and these contradictions follow all the way up till he leaves for the Soviet Union, which honestly, I haven't gotten to the Soviet Union part of my research yet. but I'm already starting to see little indicators that there was some kind of shenanigans going on, even in the Soviet Union. I mean, the names on his documents are not his name. The pictures of Oswald look like the real Oswald and not like the guy who was arrested on November 22nd. So something is up with Russia, and I haven't gotten to that yet, but that's going to be on my agenda once I finish this other volume of the Marine stuff.
So November 22nd. I know you haven't got there yet. What do you posit then? Because do you posit that one of the Oswalds get arrested and the other one remains free afterwards? We never hear from him again.
I think you never hear from him again after September 10th, 1959. Because he goes to he's in Los Angeles, and on September 10th, as he's on the way out of the Marines, he goes and gets a passport. And the photo we just saw earlier was a picture of his passport photo. And that's clearly the really Oswald, who was the same guy photographed by Robert Oswald in the other picture. And all the pictures of him from his childhood are of the really Harvey Oswald. And so I believe he's in the wind after 59. I believe he got a new identity. I believe he was repurposed and did other things. Because the entire operation was to get the spy in the Soviet Union. That's what I'm convinced of. And once that is accomplished, there's no need for that original person anymore. So that identity can be it can go from a short-term identity transfer to a permanent identity transfer. And I think that's what happened.
Right. Okay. There is, that's amazing. The idea that that would make a fantastic script for a movie, because it's something that's understandable. And I think in real life, things happen that we don't see all of the parts. A lot of this makes sense, but a lot of the case doesn't make sense. A lot of the evidence points in different directions.
Yes.
And that's always been a really a part of the Kennedy case that I've always struggled with, is the conflicting information and the feeling that there's more than one Oswald at any one time. Right. And it's never been properly explained to me what was happening.
Well, those other Oswald occurrences after June of 62, actually starting in February of 61 is when we started to get Oswald sightings while Oswald is still in the Soviet Union. I can say definitively, this has nothing to do with the Oswald operation up until 59. It's nothing to do with it whatsoever. Everybody, all the players in this new operation are CIA. William Seymour, Kerry Thornley, Lawrence Howard, David Ferry, Clay Shaw. This is a CIA operation. This is not naval intelligence. I believe Oswald was naval intelligence, and he was being set up by the CIA.
Okay.
And why were they willing to dispose of this guy? Because I think he went to the Soviet Union, and they knew he was a spook, and they sent him home with a spook, and they were punishing him. That's why I think everybody went along with this. Even
when you say they sent him home with a spook, do you mean Marina?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah, Marina absolutely participated in the setup of Oswald.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, totally. I mean, but you look like she enjoyed it. she was a frustrated lady.
She got that dead-eye Russian stare. Like, you seen early pictures of Trump's wife?
Yeah.
Look at early pictures of Trump's wife and look at pictures of Marina Oswald. And they got this like dead eye stare. And I think that's an intelligence thing.
That's juicy. Do you think, go on, I'm going to have to say it.
Honestly, I think, come on, give me a break. Russians are not about women's rights. Okay. Russians,
agreed.
The Russians are like, you're a women in intelligence. You go fuck guys for a living. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like Marina, that was Marina's job. That's probably Trump's wife. She's probably got some Russian spook training in her.
Yeah.
I mean, that dead eye stare tells me everything.
I have to say that at one point I was contacted by one Russian lady who I think had dead eye spook eyes. And after a while it was very obvious, they know how to just do the whole honey trap situation very well. They send out some very pretty ladies who know exactly how to manipulate a man And in a sense, you know, well, it's all just part of the game, isn't it? And that's what you're doing. You're tracking the game. Right, there you go. This is your website, sir. Cory Hughes Bloody History at coryhughes.org, of course. This obviously has the links to a load of different stuff. Look, we can see some of the pictures there. These are amazing. I mean, the many faces of Lee Harvey Oswald. This is incredible. That's crazy that they would think that this guy looks enough like this guy up here to pass. That makes no sense. You've got obviously you've got a lot of work, a lot of podcasts, you've got a lot of audio stuff. Your previous book, A Warning from History, is a really fantastic book as well that people should go out and read. You got, of course, people who love your work now. Is that the only place people can support you, or what else can they do? I suppose
I do
Substack.
Substack is my World War II work. But really, listen to the podcast and buy the books. That's the best thing you can do.
Yeah, rocking. That's
unless you just want to like send me like just all your money. You can just write me checks all day. That's fine. I'll take that too.
You talking to me? I don't see anyone else around here. You must be talking to me. Yeah, I gotta be honest, mate. I don't have that much money. None
of us do, man. None of us do.
I will send you some negative equity. How about that?
That sounds terrible, actually.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm gonna send you, Tabo. Well, no, thank you for people who want to go and look at it. Cory Hughes, go on the Substack. Listen, there'll be notes in underneath this video. Your work is fantastic, and I love getting together. I think we should do that more. I'd love you to join me on a Newshound sometime.
Sure.
And we each, what I want to do in the future in Newshound is tell a story via 5 sources in chronological order, and each of us bring 5 sources from the past to tell a story. I think it's a really fascinating idea that we can each go through a time period, and you can set the time period yourself. So, and I'd also, of course, love to see you on season 2 of Truth Bomb.
Yes.
At some point, seeing as, you know, last time it was hard. You got beaten just at the end. You were in the first ever episode. It seriously has advanced on since then, and I would be looking forward to you coming back on and going up against someone hardcore.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, awesome.